Hi everyone and welcome to our next tutorial. As I promised in the previous video, we're going to upload permanently lots of interesting and useful projects and tutorials. So it's a next one, and in this video we're going to build card which will have some 3D effects. First of all, before we start writing the code, I'm going to describe quickly our project. So as you can see, we have here full screen background image, and in the center of the page we have a single card. It has three different parts. In front of card we have transparent frame. Then in the middle there is main content of card. It consists of different elements. We have here image, some headings and paragraph. And also down below we have button. Behind the card there is backside, which gives us nice effect. Those parts are placed in 3D space, and when we hover over card, then they stick to each other, which creates some cool effect. Alright, that's it what we're going to do, so let's get started. On a desktop I have created a new folder in which we have two different files for HTML and for CSS, and also we have here another folder which includes some images for our project. You can download starter files from the link in the description. Okay, let's go ahead and open this folder in VS Code. Inside index.html file we have a basic structure of HTML document. Inside head element there are two links, one for our custom CSS and another for Google Fonts. We're going to use a font called Josephine Slab. Alright, let's run this file in the browser using a live server. If you don't use this extension, then I recommend to download and install it. For that you can search for live server from extension manager. Okay, let's place editor and browser side by side in order to work in a more handy and convenient way. First of all, I'm going to create HTML markup for the project. So let's open development. It will wrap entire content, so let's assign to it class name container. Next we need to open another development. It will be actually the card, so let's assign to it class name card. So as we already said, the card will consist of three different parts, so we need here three different developments. First one is going to be for the backside, so let's open development and assign to it class backside. Next one should be the middle part of the card, I mean main content, so open again development with class content. And finally we need another development for frame, so assign to it class name frame. Alright, for now it's enough for HTML. We can start writing some CSS. So let's go to style.css file. At first I'm going to create some reset styles. Let's select every element using an asterisk and set margin and padding as 0. And also we need here to set box sizing property as border box. Okay, after that I'm going to select body and define font family. As we already said, we're going to use font called Josephine Slab serif. Alright, so some basic styles are created. Let's move on and start working on the container. As you remember, we should have full screen background image in our project, so let's go ahead and work on it. Select container. First of all, let's define width and height. I'm going to set width as 100%. As for height, I'm going to use here 100 VH. If you don't know how VH measurement unit works, we can say that it's a relative measurement unit, and in this case we are setting the height of the container as 100% of the viewport. So VH stands for viewport height. Okay, next I'm going to set the image as a background, so let's write here background and then use linear gradient. I'm going to insert here RGBA values. Let's write here 0, 0, 0, and the opacity 0.7. And then again we need RGBA, same black color with opacity 0.5. After that, I'm going to indicate the path of the image. We have folder called images, and we should select image bg.jpg. I'm going to set a position of background image as center. Also, in order to avoid repeating the image, we have to use here value no repeat. And lastly, let's use background size property with value cover. Okay, that's all about the container. As you see, we have here full screen background image. Now it's time to start working on card itself. So let's select card. At first, I'm going to define the width and height of the card. As a width, let's write here 300 pixels. As for height, I'm going to set it as 550 pixels. And then let's define some temporary background. Use background color and set it as EEE. Alright, so here we have our card. Now it's visible, and the next that I want to do is to center it perfectly on the page. We can do that in a couple of different ways. We can use either Flexbox or another technique which I'm going to show you. So in order to center an element, we have to define its position as absolute. Then we need to set top and left properties as 50%. So at this point, top left corner of the card is perfectly centered, but actually that's not what we want. We have to center card itself. And in order to achieve that, we just need to add here transform property. Then we should use translate. And as the values, we have to insert minus 50%. And then again minus 50%. So this line of code allows us to move an element from its current position by 50% to the left side, because we use here negative value minus 50% as a value of x direction. And also we move the element up by same minus 50%, which is a value of y direction. So eventually we have perfectly centered card on the page. Alright, now let's go ahead and start working on three different parts which exist inside the card. At first I'm going to assign some common styles to all of them. So let's select all three parts. I mean frame, then content, and backside. I'm going to define position as absolute, and then set width and height as 100%. So in this case, those child elements will take up 100% of the width and height of their parent element, which is a card. And lastly, let's use here border radius and set it as 5 pixels. Okay, that's all about common styles. Now I'm going to define some individual styles for those elements. Let's start from the frame, select it. In order to make it visible, let's define border and assign to it values 3 pixels, solid, and as a color, let's use aqua. So here is our frame, but we want to make it look like a separate element. Right now, at a glance, it seems that the card has its own border. In order to do that, first of all, I'm going to create a 3D environment. For that, we have to use one of the CSS properties called perspective, and we have to assign it to the parent element, which in this case is card. So in general, perspective defines how far an element is placed from the user. Let's set it as 1000 pixels. Next, we need to move frame a little bit forward and also to the left side. For that, let's use transform. Then we need translate Z. Let's insert here value 50 pixels. And also we have to use translate X with value minus 20 pixels. Alright, so as you can see, the frame is placed in front of content. At this point with frame we are done. Next we have to move on and start working on content. Let's select it using class name content. And define background. Let's use again linear gradient. I'm going to insert here some RGBA values. First one is going to be 61, then 189, 178, and opacity 0.8. Next one is going to be 46, then 178, and 231. As for opacity, let's place here again 0.8. So background color is changed for content. Two different colors are mixed with a smooth transition, but actually that's not what we want. If we check out the finished project, you will find that content is split into two parts which have different colors and not just gradients. In order to achieve the needed result except those colors, we have to pass here some other values. So in front of RGBA values, we can indicate the direction of the color transition. Let's say to right. And then if we add to RGBA colors some percentage values, like so, 50% and then 0, then content will be split into two equal parts, which will have two different background colors. So the direction of color transition goes from left to right. Actually, value to right is an equivalent of 90 degrees. So as you can see, we have here the exact same result. In our case, we want to split content diagonally. So instead of 90 degrees, I'm going to use here 290 degrees. So now we have here needed result. Actually, it's sort of confusing and weird stuff, and if you want to learn about and understand these things more deeply, I recommend to check out our CSS bootcamp on Udemy, in which we explain how this technique works in details. You can find a link in the description. Alright, let's move on and start working on the back side, but before that I'm going to get rid of background color from the card because we don't need it anymore. Let's go ahead and select backside, define its background color. I'm going to use here RGBA value. Let's insert here 233, 93, 38 and opacity 0.5. For now the backside is not quite visible because it's placed right behind the content. So in order to make it visible, we have to place it a little bit to the left side and slightly far from content. Actually, we can copy this code from here, paste it for backside, and then we have to change values. We need here to use opposite values. I mean, instead of 50 pixels, we need here minus 50 pixels, and also instead of minus 20 pixels, we need 20 pixels. Okay, that's it about backside. Before we create the hover effect, I'm going to insert some content to the middle part of our card. So let's go to index.html file and inside content, let's open img element. Then in source attribute, indicate the path of image. We have folder images, and then we have to select person.jpg. Also, let's assign to it class name img. Next, let's insert here h1 heading element for the full name of the person. It's going to have class name full name. Let's insert here Jane Brown. Next, we need another heading element for the profession. It's going to be h2 heading element with class name profession. And also let's insert here web designer. After that, we need to create a paragraph which will include some dummy text. Let's assign to p element class name about me and also insert some dummy text. Let's wrap it by quotes. And lastly, we need here button with class name card btn and with the text view profile. Alright, so with markup we are done. Let's go ahead and style those newly created elements. At first, let's take care of their positions inside content. I'm going to manage it using Flagsbox. So we need here display flags. For now, elements are placed horizontally in a row. So we need to change direction and make it a column. Right, flags direction column. Then we need some space around flex items. For that, let's use justify content with value space around. And lastly, in order to place flex items horizontally in the center, let's use align items with value center. In general, align items property works according to the vertical direction, but as soon as we change flex direction and make it column, align items property starts working according to the horizontal direction. And the same we can say about justify content property. Alright, let's go ahead and start styling the image. Select it using class name img. At first I'm going to decrease its width. Let's make it 65%. Then in order to make it look like a circle, we have to use border radius with value 50%. Also, let's create some space at the top of image. For that, use margin top and assign to it value 10 pixels. And lastly, create border with values 5 pixels, solid, and the color white. Okay, that's it about image. It's looking good. Let's go ahead and work on full name. I'm going to select it with class name, full name. Let's increase font size, set it as 40 pixels, and change color, make it white. Next we have to select second heading element, which has class name profession. Let's copy those two properties from here and change values. We need here 25 pixels and the color DDD. Alright, that's it about headings. Next we have paragraph, which has class name about me. At first, let's increase font size, set it as 19 pixels, then change color, make it white. And also I'm going to change background color. Let's use here RGBA value 0, 0, 0 and opacity 0.3. Then decrease slightly width of paragraph. I'm going to make it 90%. Create some space using padding on all four sides. Let's set padding as 10 pixels. Then place text in the center inside box. For that we need text align center. And lastly, make corners rounded using border radius with the value 5 pixels. Okay, with paragraph we are done, and the last element of content which we have to style is button. So let's go ahead and select it using class name cardBTN. First of all, let's remove some default styles, set border as none, and also get rid of default outline, write none. Then define width and height. I'm going to set width as 150 pixels. As for height, let's assign to it 35 pixels. After that, let's change background color. I'm going to use here linear gradient. As a first color, let's insert 6896E0. As for second color, I'm going to pass here 0D517E. After that, let's change color. Use here DDD. Also set font size as 13 pixels and make text uppercase using text transform with value uppercase. In case of button, we have to change font family manually because as you can see, it has default font family. So let's write here font family and assign to it font called Josephine Slab serif. Alright, as you see, text does not look quite good. Let's make it bolder using font weight bold, and also create some space between letters using letter spacing with value 1 pixel. Okay, next I'm going to create some space at the bottom. For that, use margin bottom with the value 15 pixels. Also, let's make bottom a little bit rounded using border radius with value 50 pixels. After that, I want to create some shadow effect. So let's go ahead and use box shadow with the following values. Let's pass here 0, then 10 pixels, 20 pixels, and as a color, use RGBA value. Insert here black color 0, 0, 0, and opacity 0.5. And lastly, change type of cursor, make it pointer. Alright, so now button is looking good, but actually we have here a little problem. We have just changed cursor type and made it pointer, but when we hover over the button, it doesn't work. The reason is that in front of content we have a frame which doesn't allow us to apply the mentioned style to the button. In order to fix that, we have to assign to frame one of the CSS properties called pointer events. And we have to set it as none. Now if we hover over the button, then cursor pointer will work fine. Alright, we have customized our card, and the last thing that we have to do is to create a hover effect. As you remember, on hover, we want those three parts to move smoothly and to stick each other. So let's go ahead and select a card with hover. Then select frame. So on hover, we want to set translate Z and translate X functions as 0. I'm going to copy this line of code from here and then just change values. Let's insert here in both places 0. The same we need for backside as well, so let's duplicate this code and just change the class name. Instead of frame, write backside. And finally, in order to make effect smoother, use transition with transform, then duration 0.5 seconds. Let's copy it and paste it for backside as well. Okay, so if we hover, then everything will work perfectly. We have here nice 3D effect. Alright, that's it about this project. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and learned some interesting and useful things. If you like this video, then please thumbs up, comment below, and what's the most important, subscribe to our channel in order to stay tuned when the new content is uploaded. If you want to get notified about every newly uploaded video, then you have to click the bell right after subscribing button. Okay, see you in the next tutorial.